The ladies weren't always the one that would cook in the camp, though a lot of ladies were in the camp. Again, it was for security. This was a civil war for the most part here in South Carolina, and the women were fair game because it was personal. If your family didn't like my family, well, I'm going to attack you while you're in the army or away. So a lot of the family members would march with the army. In our regiment, at least 2 ladies were actually on the orderly book, so they could be issued rations like the men were. But they would help out with the sewing. They would help out with we had a surgeon, so they'd be nurses to help with the surgery. They'd help with the kids. They'd teach the kids. They would run like mini schools, and then eventually, when the kids got old enough, some would be messengers, some would become musicians, until they're old enough. It's the same militia law, 16 to 60, and then they could be in the line. Our youngest member we know in the regiment for sure was 15. Oldest member in the regiment we know of was 70. And surprisingly, a few of them lived to 100 at the end of the war, which means after being on campaign, living in the swamps, living with Marion, doing all these different things, they would their land grants were actually in Georgia, or this little place called Louisiana, because we just purchased this land in 1805. A lot of them were given these huge land grants in Louisiana, and they would move to Louisiana and get hundreds of acres. They would live to almost 80, 90 years old, which is pretty remarkable for somebody that grew up in this period of serving on campaign, not healthy living conditions, not really great diets, living in these tents, constantly on the move and dealing with diseases and everything else, to live that long. So,
what was the typical ration per person while on campaign?
It would depend if you're in garrison or not. In garrison, you're supposed to get a pound of bread, but usually that's going to be the flour. So you get your flour, your salt, you get out. Then at that point, I mean, I've seen everyone do it from the board to they would actually get a spade, clean off the shovel, and then they'll make basically hardtack. So you take the flour, the salt, a little bit of water, make a really, really stiff dough out of it, and then you cook over the fire, and you make a hard biscuit, and you cook it in coffee. They were mostly drinking coffee. They didn't drink a lot of tea because of the protests, so they were drinking a lot of coffee. There was this newfangled drink that came out called hot cocoa. They didn't have in the field a lot, but you could see them in coffee houses in Charleston. But the men would actually take this, and it's a brick of bread, is what it is. No taste, but it's flour. It's paste. I mean, it's flour with a little bit of salt, cooked for a hard time. They would be issued ginger beers in a lot of cases. Jaundice was a common ailment. You weren't getting enough vitamin C, so they tried to give them some vegetables they could. Salt beef, salt pork, salt fish, if they could get them in the field. Wagons were very low. We didn't have a lot of wagons. The roads were in horrible conditions, and we usually were marching faster than the wagons could keep up. So if we were in garrison, so for a while, up to about 79, when we were at Fort Sullivan, Dorchester, places around the city, yeah, we were in garrison, we're living in tents. We could get supplies of food. But when we were in the field on campaign, like marching to Stono Ferry, marching against Prevost, marching, whatever we could procure off the field. And the animals knew, because you wouldn't find a deer or anything within 5 miles of a camp, because the scouts, the riflemen will be out hunting.
So you guys, second, what is it?
2nd South Carolina.
Came out of Charleston?
We were a Charleston base unit. Yep. The Columbia base unit, which actually didn't exist back then, Columbia was a crossing point on the river. And where Sumter is now was the town of Statesburg. And that was called the High Hill of the Santees. That was a resting area. Everyone stopped there. Every army, Tarleton stopped there, Greenwood stopped there. It was a resting area. After the fall of Charleston, the British, just like we would try to do in Vietnam, would put these base camps. So Camden would be a base camp, 96 would be a base camp, King Street would be a base camp. They knew that their strategic goal was, okay, now we got to move up into North Carolina to Virginia. Well, you can't do that if your lines of communications aren't secure. Well, Marion, Sumter, they're hitting all this rear area, so until they can secure them and stop them, they had to keep these areas occupied. So they relied on the loyalists to do it. And then the Loyalists weren't doing too good of a job, so they had to try to use British regulars, but there wasn't a lot. After Sir Henry Clinton took Charleston, he went back to New York City. He left Cornwallis, and he didn't leave him a lot of British troops. I always like to ask people, how many British soldiers were in Tarleton's Legion? 1. Tarleton.
Wow.
The rest are Americans. Every one of them is from upstate. Originally, a lot of Tarleton's Legion are from the northern colonies. They're all loyalists. And then, of course, when they get down here, unfortunately, their ship sank, so they had no horses. So they had to get horses first before they could do anything. And then once they got their horses, they had to train them. And then once they got the horses trained, they would chase down Buford. And that was actually impressive, that the fact that they rode 113 miles in 2 days to catch him. And Buford outnumbered him. But this is, again, another miscalculation. Buford all had green troops. They were replacements going to Charleston. And they had heard that Charleston failed, like, oh, no need to go to Charleston. He turned around and was heading north. The fact that he didn't think Tarleton was anywhere near him, but he rode that far in 2 days. He was near Georgetown. When he heard that Buford was up there, he rode from Georgetown, South Carolina, all the way up to where the Waxhaws, across the North Carolina border in 2 days.
Wow.
In the summer. And the way he did it, his infantry was riding on the back of the horses with his cavalry. He was riding so fast, he left his artillery behind. The horses pulling his guns were so hot, they couldn't keep up. He says, leave them. He only attacked Buford with 300 men. So this whole story about Buford's massacre isn't. It's propaganda.
That's pretty cool.
Because, and we were the best ones at it when it came to the propaganda, information warfare, kind of like what we do today. Not to say that media never tells all the story, but we just lost the city, we just lost the army, and we just lost another army under Buford. What do we do about it? We need an enemy! We need a bad guy! Tarleton! The brutal Tarleton! Bloody band! It was the Battle of the Waxhaws. And the reason why is Tarleton's leadership. He likes to fight. Whereas if you look at Marion never fought. In fact, a lot of people thought Marion's sword was rusted in because he never drew his sword once. He would use his pistol to signal an attack. He would never attack, he would command. Tarleton never commanded, he attacked. So during the battle, he's commanding one of the wings. And when the one volley that Buford men fired, the one golden BB took out his horse. So he's under his horse. So during that whole time in the fight, no one's in command. So when a guy did come out try to surrender, I'm not in command. So he's running up to all these British officers. He's like, I'm not in command. And they tell him to go away. So when Tarleton did come up, he did accept their surrender. There wasn't a massacre. Only one guy did get chopped up. He was actually chopped 23 times. Lost a hand, hit here 4 times, got cut here, got bayoneted, stabbed because he's laying there wounded. One of the leading guys would walk by and he looks down at him like, are you surrendering? He goes, no, I don't plan to, so you might as well just shoot me now. Okay, boom, bang, and walks off. Well, that didn't kill him. Another guy comes by and asks him, do you plan on surrendering? No, I don't plan to. You better shoot and kill me now. Okay, bam, does it again. And the only reason why we know this, he lived. Wow. He wrote about it. He's the only one we know of from that battle who talks about being stabbed and shot 23 times. He lived through it. Tarleton took everyone prisoner. He also took 23 wagons worth of supplies, 2 brand new 6-pound cannons, 2 brand new mortars, 2 wagons full of gunpowder. No one writes about that, but we needed a villain. We needed to call him Bloody Band. We needed to get the people back up to fight for us. Just like up north, Battle of Saratoga, everyone talks about the Jane McCrae massacre. They leave out the piece that Jane McCrae was a loyalist. That she got scalped by the Mohawks because they were angry because they weren't allowed to pillage. So one of them did scalp her. Okay. Was amazingly, the people from Fort Edward knew she was a loyalist and that she was waiting for her husband. They just left that out of the news. Oh no, poor Jane McCrae, she got scalped by the Indians. We don't do anything now. They're going to kill us all. 30,000 of our militia guys showed up to stop the British. Great. They just left out the part that she's a loyalist. We did the same thing down here in the South. Information warfare. So no change in today, other than the method. It's just a lot slower. Just like we had the first Tea Party. No one talks about that. We before 1 week before the Boston Tea Party, we had ours in Charleston. And you look how long it takes news to get from here to Boston. It takes 1 week. And our committee down here was talking to the guys in Boston, and we told them what we did. The difference was we didn't throw ours into Charleston Harbor. We just took all the tea and we put it away and sat on it for about a year and sold it and took the money to buy arms. Whereas in Boston, they threw it into the harbor. Yeah, great. At least we invested ours.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.